maybe go for a Shadow Ball instead of the Dazzling Gleam. So that would be a neutral hit. But Screamtail is going to protect. No, Dazzling Gleam is the choice. So that is going to be resisted damage yet again into Ting Lu, just like we saw in game 1. Hardly any damage at all. There's the waterfall. You have the flinch chance every time, but no flinch coming through. Heavy slam, bringing Flutter Mane down under half.
Yeah, it's similar to what we saw the previous time, but it is a lot of nice damage on the Ting Lu. With how impactful it was last time, you're getting a little more of that health could have made a big difference, right? It was very close in the end, so perhaps that's Victor's adjustment, right? Like, all right, I'm going to get a similar game to what I played in game 1, but maybe I'm going to prioritize the damage a little bit more onto this Ting Lu.
Perish Song from the Screamtail this time around is going to hit all of the Pokemon here. They will faint at the end of 3 turns. Shadow Ball from Flutter Mane into Ting Lu. You can see even that as a neutral hit, really not doing too much. And the follow-up Waterfall does not get it, but he does get the flinch this time. Wolf cannot go for the Heavy Slam to knock out the Flutter Mane.
Yeah, that's a huge flinch. You know, I guess the 2 Waterfalls, you're kind of expecting to get one of the 2 turns, but yeah, that would have been a knockout for Wolf. That's a switch up for him compared to what he did the last time we saw this, where previously he opted to immediately switch the Ting Lu out, and he almost got the reward for it, but Flutter Mane able to hang on.
And now the Screamtail kind of debating back and forth, right? Do I go for a disable to disable this waterfall? Is Gyarados going to switch his move choice up right now, so disable's not going to work as well? It's kind of got Wolf in a tough predicament here.
Yeah, and Wolf, one thing to keep in mind too, like unlike most Ting Lu, this Ting Lu does know Protect. Victor has kind of just played as though it does not have Protect and targeted down this whole time, but perhaps Wolf hoping that, you know, the threat of Protect will kick in here.
There is the disable, so if Gyarados went for a waterfall yet again, he's not going to do anything on this turn. Shadow Ball into Ting Lu is going to be enough to take it out, so Wolf is down his terrestrialized Pokemon here in Game 3. Gonna have to win this game with his other Pokemon remaining. Waterfall is disabled, so Wolf does make the call that Gyarados was going to go for that, and we have 2 turns left on all of these Perish counts.
I mean, that's something at least, right? You know, I assume we'll see Gothitelle come in now. You know, Gyarados stuck without any attacks. 2 turns of Perish Song, so it should be fairly easy for Wolf to pick up one more, but you know, he does need to get in a position where he can actually, you know, start knocking out Pokemon to the other side, right? This time without Ting Lu, the offense is looking a little bit sketchier. We'll have to, you know, Tatsugiri lists Dondozo, you know, no longer no commander available, I guess, you know, going to have to lead the charge himself this time.
Yeah, gonna have to fly solo to victory if Dondozo is gonna get Wolf across the finish line here at 7-0. But Victor, especially his Flutter Mane, like, yes, Gyarados is disabled. You're not gonna be able to waterfall anymore, but the Flutter Mane having access to the Shadow Ball into either of these psychic types, like probably preferably into the Gothitelle, can just really output massive damage on Victor's end of the field. And Wolf is going to switch into the Dondozo.
Yeah, I mean, potentially scary here. Like, you really do need this Dondozo's HP, so I'll have to see which of the 2 Pokemon that Flutter Mane opts to try to target down.
Yeah, fake out into the Gyarados. He's choosing both, and the answer is really not a lot of damage into either when you use a spread Dazzling Gleam like that. Dondozo will recover up some HP as well, thanks to the leftovers every turn, but there's no +2 boost on this Dondozo, as you were saying, Scott. This is just, you know, general bulk on it.
Yeah, sort of an awkward spot now, right? Where you know, you're likely going to get the knockout on Gyarados this turn, but there's some serious threat of having to take a Thunder Wave onto, well, one of these 2 Pokemon. I would assume onto Dondozo, right? And now your only Pokemon with like any real offensive presence winds up paralyzed. The flip side of this is that you do get to get rid of one Pokemon. Flutter Mane's weak. You know, maybe you can find a way to pick up that Flutter Mane knockout, and then Perish Song becomes much more threatening. Especially, you know, this is the solo Dondozo style Dondozo with Yawn and the leftovers, where, you know, even if it's not doing a bunch of damage, it can stop the other side from doing damage too.
And you know, Flutter Mane is going to switch out from Wolf's perspective since it is the last turn of Perish Song. You don't want it to faint. Gyarados with the taunt, stopping any non-damaging moves from the Gothitelle. Yawn, however, into the Amoonguss slot there, so after its next attack, the next turn, it would be put to sleep. Psychic is nice into the poison type. That is over 50%, but crucially for Victor, just enough to activate the Citrus Berry, meaning the next Psychic, barring a critical hit, would not knock out.
Yeah, excellent turn by Wolf, though, right? I mean, he correctly calls what's coming in. He knows, like, well, you're not just going to give me your Flutter Mane, so you have to switch there. Psychic doing a ton of damage to this Amoonguss, picking up the knockout in the Gyarados, and now the Amoonguss is an awkward spot, right, where, you know, is it just going to immediately switch out to avoid being put to sleep by Yawn? Probably it has to, right? Which gives Wolf the chance
and
to
get the
reposition here,
regenerator
too.
boost as
Yeah.
well. So the Iron Hands will switch in here. We know Victor has the Fluttermane in the back. You're actually putting the Fluttermane in a pretty precarious position on the switch in if you decide to bring Amoonguss out for regenerator.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably something I would attempt to fish for on Wolf's side. The other end of it too is I think it's so obvious that he doesn't want to take the Thunder Punch into Doza here, but I think it's worth trying to be cheeky there too. Especially since Victor, we saw how powerful Sword Stance was in Game 1. I think there's some temptation here where like, well, I've kind of got Wolf threatened here. Maybe I can sneak another one off. I think in Wolf's case, it's very important not to allow another one without contesting it a little bit harder than in the first game.
And there is Amoonguss, instead of switching out, just going to get rid of that poison typing so that Psychic is not super effective. Victor hoping in this spot that a double target into the Amoonguss would not be enough to knock it out. We're not even going to have a double target anyway since the Yawn goes towards the Iron Hands. Here is the Psychic onto Amoonguss, and that does a lot less damage since it's no longer a poison type. Thunder Punch into Dondozo will bring it down very low, and there's the Spore to follow up as well, putting Dondozo to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, not great, but Dondozo may have done its job there, right? It's got that Yawn effect now on the Iron Hands, and perhaps most crucially, it's asleep instead of the Screamtail, right? I think Wolf likely going to need to use Parasong to close this one out, so maybe feeling like, all right, I can't afford to switch into an obvious Spore here and let Screamtail get put to sleep instead. In this scenario, it's not wonderful, but he does have the Gothitelle out, who potentially can survive for quite a while now that both of these Pokemon are trapped. One's asleep and one's about to fall asleep. So maybe you can find a way to get a sneaky Perish KO or something.
And even at points that the, let's say, Screamtail or Dondozo comes back in and they're low health, you do have access to Heal Pulse as well to keep them around. That's another one of the things that can be really frustrating to deal with on a Parasong team, is if you can just keep their health up. But there's a Psychic with the critical hit, knocking out Amoonguss. That was not a super effective hit. We saw the Psychic the last turn not doing too much damage, so Lady Luck might be back on Wolf's side after that huge crit in Game 2. He gets one here in Game 3, and his Iron Hands is looking to be a menace on Victor's end after that Sword Stance.
Yeah, I mean, we saw how powerful the Sword Stance was in that first game, but now Screamtail getting out of here, relatively scot-free, and there could only be 3 turns left potentially in this game for those Iron Hands to work.
Yeah, you got to choose. Fluttermane can theoretically only Shadow Ball one of these 2 targets in Gothitelle and Screamtail. And Screamtail is a Pokemon with such an insane HP stat that even though the Fluttermane is super effective on Shadow Ball, it doesn't have the booster energy boost to its special attack anymore.
Yeah, really awkward spot too for the Fluttermane, where you try to want to preserve yourself to allow the Iron Hands time to wake up, but you can't because of this Parasong, right? You have to go all in.
Yeah, the Parasong will activate on all 4 of these Pokemon. Shadow Ball into which slot? It's into the Protect. Wolf calling that the valued target was Gothitelle instead of the Screamtail, and now Iron Hands is still asleep, and we have potentially at most 3 more turns left in this game.
Oh, this is scary, especially if Wolf can get some shuffling of his Pokemon here through, where he does have the ability to switch here. He'll need to remove Parasong from one of these Pokemon, and then once Gothitelle comes back, it's threatening a Fake Out onto that Iron Hand slot. Even if it wakes up now, it can only swing so quickly, right? Only single target attacks for it. Fluttermane really gonna have to do some damage.
This has been really back and forth, and we love to see close action like this in a win-in scenario. 2 of the best trainers here in Columbus this weekend having a lot of fun in this back and forth. Shadow Ball into the Dondozo is enough to take down that sleepy Dondozo, but more importantly, it does get rid of the Parasong that was on the Gothitelle.
Yeah, and that Encore is a big deal too, right? The last move we saw this Iron Hands use was Sword Stance. So, +4 attack is great and all, but there's no chance of this Encore wearing off in time for it to swing. So, this Iron Hands is basically fainted already. It's slow, so there's some benefits to the fact that it's still out in the field, but if Wolf is able to find a way to keep this Gothitelle on the field for 2 more turns, he'll win.
Yeah, the Fluttermane is essentially the only form of offense Victor has remaining in this matchup. And we've noted that Shadow Ball is a very juicy option into both of these targets on Wolf's end. But if you disable a Shadow Ball, then the Fluttermane does not have access to that. So let's see what happens. Gothitelle with the Protect. Disable from Screamtail. Victor might see the writing on the wall if he did choose Shadow Ball this turn. No! expecting the disable into that slot instead of Moonblast, but still it's instant protect. This Scream Tail is just fully healthy.
Yeah, I mean, Scream Tail's doing a job here. It may in the end matter too much because the Parasong is going to take it out too, but Gothitail's healthy enough now that, you know, I mean, perhaps a critical hit Moonblast could finish this one off, but otherwise, I think the Gothitail's going to be able to hang on and close this out for Wolf. One more chance for Victor to try to take this one. Otherwise, Wolf will pick up that 7th win and move on to day 2.
Yeah, Wolf, the master of perish trap strategies throughout many years and many eras of VGC's history, proving yet again that he is on top of this strategy. There's the encore, encoring Fluttermane into the Moonblast since the Shadow Ball would have been a worse hit. Gothitail takes that like a champ and will be rewarded by having a little bit of a snack thanks to its Citrus Berry, recovering its HP up. It's the only Pokemon on the field right now that is not affected by the Perish Song. And Swords Dance on the way out, you're gonna flex that +4 attack when it gets knocked out. But because of that encore, Scream Tail will knock itself out from Perish Song, but also the Fluttermane and Iron Hands will also go down, and Gothitail will be the last Pokemon standing, and Wolf Glick is one of the first trainers moving on to day 2 here at the North American International Championship.
We see why he's so famous for running that Perish Trap team, right? When the song stops, only one Pokemon is still standing, and it's that Gothitail. Just really well played there, right? Or the then the game got pretty scary, where it seemed like, you know, there was a lot of different ways that could have played out, but Wolf handled it very well. You know, I think even a critical hit, it seemed like probably wouldn't have been enough on that Moonblast, where you know, the disable onto the Shadow Ball just covered all of the bad situations at the end of that game so well. We see the importance of that in game 2, right? Where you know, the critical hits happen, and you know, you got to do what you can to mitigate them, especially with a defensive team like that. I thought it just really well played.
Yeah, and I think we're looking at it, and for over a decade, Scott, we've been like, man, Amoonguss is so annoying, and Fluttermane is like, I'm right in the conversation of an absolute pest to deal with if you're not prepared with Encore, Disable, you know, protecting when you try to attack me, Perish Song as well. This Scream Tail is really a huge nuisance.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. And, you know, I think another Pokemon that was an impressive nuisance in that game was the Gothitail, not just for the Shadow Tag. Man, it was kind of pumping up the damage with those Psychics there. Yeah, the special attack stat of that Pokemon's a little higher than people think.
Yeah, so let's give a little shout out to Rihanna and Pond to replay here with this matchup between Victor and Wolf going to game 3. Really back and forth. I think there are a lot of huge crucial critical hits as well, but this is as fun of a back and forth that we can really ask for as casters for a winning in.
Yeah, I mean, both sides are so close, really, in all 3 games. You know, it's you see why both of them made it to 6-0.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, Victor, of course, we have confidence in Victor as a trainer in the last 2 rounds to get that last victory he needs to move on to day 2. And with the very balanced team that Victor ran here that we've seen so far, like, I definitely think I would anticipate in these last 2 matches, fingers crossed, Victor can make it to day 2.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, I think we mentioned in the pregame that, you know, Wolf probably knows this matchup very well. I'm sure it's something he was planning for as he used this team. And Victor was just that close, right? There were a handful of turns where if Victor had gotten the right dice roll, that would have been over. I think it was a very well played game by him, especially because, you know, I think on that side of the field, you know, this is not the sort of team that archetype is designed to defeat, right?
Yeah, I think it's so impressive when you see trainers that are able to handle an unadvantageous position, right? A critical hit or getting flinched by waterfall or something like that, maybe paralysis flinch as well. When you don't let that affect your decision making in future turns because you're frustrated about a prior turn.
Yeah. And I think like critical hits in this sort of matchup are maybe even more important than almost any other, right? Where like having Pokemon remaining so that you can switch out of Perish Song is such a critical part of that matchup. And you know, we saw in the second game, you know, a different type of critical hit where and a flinch too. Let's not forget about the flinch. There was so much
yeah,
crazy
it
stuff
looked
in
tough
the series.
for Wolf, right?
Yeah.
Because his Ting Lu, we forget because how long that game went on. Ting Lu went down and really was not able to sand trap, you know, anybody on the field. But once Gyarados, again, like we kind of pointed out between game 2, that huge critical hit there. But Gyarados doesn't do much in the matchup except get knocked out from Perish Song.
Yeah, I mean, once again, right? Although the flinch mattered, right? But Ting Lu was kind of the MVP of game 1 and you know, was able to prevent Ting Lu from dominating again. But Gothitail just did so much there, you know, both in terms of trapping those Pokemon. Also, yeah, you know, it got that Psychic off onto the Amoonguss on the switch. That damage was super critical. And then, yeah, the critical hit, you know, it took and gave both directions over the course of that series. But that extra little bit of damage mattered so much, allowing Screentail to get that Parasong, and we saw how close it was at the end for Victor, almost getting to turn the offense back on, right? Still, he hadn't negated Screentail entirely, where if the Parasong wasn't a factor, then would have just simply been able to re-encore it into Sword Stance, but the encore did end in the very last turn of the game, right? So if you'd found some way to get like half a turn more of value, maybe there's an alternate reality where Iron Hand swings there with the boosted attack and the game goes a different direction. But Wolf handled that perfectly, was just far enough ahead that he was able to take care of that one.
Yeah, best of luck to Victor in those last 2 rounds of Swiss. But for everyone wondering, where's Wolfie? He's on the stage with Sierra right now, ready for a player interview. So Sierra, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Scott. I'm here with Wolf Glick, winner of our last round, who's now secured a spot in day 2 here in Columbus. Congratulations. Great stuff. Undefeated so far. You get that day 2. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel good. That set was really stressful. Like, game 1 was kind of close, and then game 2, I was like, okay, like, I'm very in control. Like, Dendozo, Flamigo about to be best friends, and then all of a sudden, I was like, where's Dendozo? He's gone. So, yeah, in game 3, like, I felt like my opening was, like, pretty decent. I got damage in the Fluttermane, and then I saw it stayed in, and I was like, great. Like, I'll get rid of Fluttermane. That makes the rest of this easy, and then I flinched. So, yeah, it was, like, pretty stressful. I definitely am feeling fatigue. I'm feeling a little exhaustion. I'm feeling tired. I know a lot of synonyms. I was reading the thesaurus before I started. But, yeah, overall good. I mean, I'm really happy to have started out 7-0. I'm hoping to win some more games today. But, yeah, really happy to make it to tomorrow with this team, which I really like.
Yeah, the team is really interesting because it's a strategy that we've gotten to see with this Perish, Tatsugiri, all of a sudden you can copy with the Flamigo. And we got to see you do 2 different strategies, also just going with the more Perish trap mode, which kind of reminiscent of your Orlando team. So was it just kind of coming back around full circle with the Screentail?
Yeah, I love Screentail. I think it's got to be my new favorite Pokemon from Generation 9 at the very least. It's so good. But yeah, I thought that like the Dendozo Flamigo strategy has a lot of potential. It's really, really strong, and it became less popular after a point in the season, but it was largely because of the presence of like Haze Palafin and Haze Murkrow. So yeah, I think the team is really, really neat. It's difficult to use for sure, but I feel like there's a lot of different ways that you can approach matchups like it, and I was able to show at least 2 of them off in that set.
So obviously there was some unfortunate things in that game too, to where it looked like that Dondozo, Perish, Tatsugiri, Flamigo combination would come to fruition, and unfortunately we were a little robbed of that. But how often do you actually get that setup going on, or is it a lot of pivoting to plan B?
It's definitely pretty often. Like it's, I know it didn't like really showcase it in that set, but Flamigo is just so strong, and a lot of teams just like don't have answers for it. So my opponent there, Victor, had clear Smogomungus, but I didn't think that I couldn't bring it because of it, but wanted to be careful, and that's why I didn't go back to it in game 3, especially because, as you saw, like the Dendozo part of the strategy is weak to critical hits. So yeah, I didn't want to like leave my fate to chance there. Decided to play with a strategy that was less less susceptible to luck. So yeah, I mean, Flamigo obviously doesn't come every game, but it comes to a lot of them for sure.
And then now with this team going up against this field, how are you feeling just in general with it and how it stacks up? It's definitely a team that you have to be thinking a lot and have to pivot, but...
Yeah, I mean, the team is really strong. Like, for me, this tournament is my, like, I wanted to play in a tournament where I could say I am at or near my peak when it came to this format, especially with the Worlds format. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but it's very likely going to be Regulation D if it hasn't already been confirmed, which is just very, very different than what we've been playing. I really wanted this to be a strong last hurrah from me. I've spent a lot of this year kind of working on my skills, like in relation to this specific format, and I really wanted to say, okay, like what happens when I go all out? What happens when I try my best? What happens when I like really build a team that I think allows me to play at close to my full potential? And it's really difficult to use. Like I'm much more fatigued at this point in the day than I would normally be, but I think the team is strong, and like if I lose, I don't think it's going to be because I like made an issue with like team building. I think it'll be because my play just like can't keep up. But yeah, I really love the team. I was so excited to actually like use it after just practicing for forever. So it's really fun. It's really fun to use. It's really fun for me to play a team that's so difficult to pilot.
Well, it's definitely fun to watch too, so congratulations
Thank you.
on that win. Just a couple more and then you can take a rest until tomorrow.
Yeah.
But before I let you go, if you have any final words or any shout-outs.
Yeah, I mean, shout-outs to Carson, Yuki, and Marcus, who all were the main kind of driving force working on this team with me. Shout out to Dylan as well for his help with the spreads. And then all my friends, Aaron, you guys are great. Haley, I have so many people back home supporting me, like all the time. Like I feel very lucky, just at all points when like I know that when I play on stream, like people will watch me and support me, and yeah, I feel very, very lucky to be able to do what I do, to be able to play Pokemon like this, and to have such a strong support network like that. No matter whether I'm doing well or doing poorly, like I always know that I'll have people in my corner no matter what. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone who I know and who is always supporting me. And of course, thanks to I know that there are a lot of people at home who like were interested in this team, and people here who are like really curious about how it plays and who are rooting for me and cheering me on. And so I want to say thank you. Like I don't know all of you, but I really do appreciate all the support, and I don't take it for granted. So yeah, overall, just like I feel very grateful to be in the position that I'm in.
And congratulations once again. Best of luck for the rest of the day and for tomorrow, having secured that spot. Of course, Wolf is just one of a few. We still have a couple more rounds, more players to find out who's advancing on. So we're going to be taking a short break and more Swiss after that.
Welcome, trainers. My name is Aaron Zhang, and today I'm here to talk about the treasures of Ruin: Wo-Chien, Chien-Pao, Ting-Lu, and Chi-Yu. These 4 Pokemon were introduced to competitive play in the Regulation C rule set, and they've had a huge impact on how trainers approach team building and battling. The treasures of Ruin stand out for a couple of reasons. First of all, they all have great stat distributions, with some being strong offensively and others being strong defensively. In addition, they each have a unique signature ability that drops a specific stat of all other Pokemon on the field other than themselves. These abilities are unlike anything we've ever seen before in competitive Pokemon, and they're very powerful. As a result, you should expect most top teams in Regulation C to have at least one of the treasures of Ruin. Let's now dive into each one a little bit more. Chien-Pao is the fastest Pokemon among the treasures of Ruin. It has a dual typing of Dark and Ice, and is a relatively frail Pokemon. As a result, trainers often opt to maximize its attack and speed stats and give it a Focus Sash. It gets access to a wide variety of strong offensive attacks such as Icicle Crash, Ice Spinner, Throat Chop, Sucker Punch, and Sacred Sword. Chien-Pao's ability, Sword of Ruin, decreases the defense stat of all Pokemon on the field other than Chien-Pao. As a result, it is often paired with strong physical attackers such as Dragonite and Palafin. The next treasures of Ruin is Chi-Yu, a Dark and Fire type Pokemon. Chi-Yu is quite fast and has an incredible base special attack and special defense stat. It gets access to a wide variety of moves such as Heat Wave, Overheat, Dark Pulse, Psychic, Snarl, Will-O-Wisp, and Substitute. Common items for Chi-Yu include Focus Sash, Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, Life Orb, and Safety Goggles. Chi-Yu's ability, Beads of Ruin, decreases the special defense stat of all Pokemon on the field other than Chi-Yu. As a result, it's often paired with strong special attackers such as Fluttermane, Iron Bundle, Lamora, Torkoal, and Goldengo. The combination of Chi-Yu and Fluttermane in particular is strong, utilizing 2 of the strongest special attackers in the game to quickly overwhelm opposing teams before they get a chance to respond. Following Chi-Yu, we've got Ting-Lu, a Dark and Ground type Pokemon. Ting-Lu is one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the entire Regulation C rule set, and is difficult to knock out due to its incredible base HP and defense stats. Ting-Lu gets access to strong moves such as Heavy Slam, Stomping Tantrum, Body Press, Runation, Rock Slide, Snarl, and Fissure. Since Ting-Lu does not get access to any moves that allow it to heal itself, trainers often use recovery items such as Leftovers or Citrus Berry to help it survive for a longer period of time. Assault Vest is also one of the most common items on this Pokemon. Ting-Lu's ability, Vessel of Ruin, decreases the special attack stat of all Pokemon on the field other than Ting-Lu. As a result, it can be used to protect Pokemon that have lower base special defense stats. It's also valuable in helping bulky Pokemon like Iron Hands, Annihilate, and Amoonguss survive for longer periods of time. Finally, we've got Wo-Chien, a Dark and Grass type Pokemon. Similar to Ting-Lu, Wo-Chien is also difficult to knock out as it has great base HP and defense stats, and an incredible base special defense stat. Wo-Chien generally focuses less on offense, which is reflected by its most common moves such as Foul Play, Pollen Puff, Leech Seed, Snarl, Giga Drain, Knockoff, Runation, and Protect. This is also reflected by its most common items such as Leftovers, Citrus Berry, and Assault Vest. Wo-Chien's ability, Tablets of Ruin, decreases the attack stat of all Pokemon on the field other than Wo-Chien. As a result, common partners for it include naturally bulky Pokemon and Pokemon that like to increase their own stats, such as Annihilate. All 4 Rune Pokemon have unique abilities that make them valuable to any team. However, it's also important to remember that these abilities also have drawbacks. They also lower your own Pokemon stats. Trainers have to be cautious in making sure they do not suffer from their own abilities when they use these Pokemon. Overall, all 4 of the Rune Pokemon have great competitive potential and strength. Keep watching to see how they'll impact this tournament and which one ends up on top.
I'm Jisung Lee, and I'm originally from Korea, and I'm currently living in Canada.
An ice shard here would do it. Coming out for the Baxcalibur, so that priority move going into the Tatsugiri. And that final knockout crowns Jisung Lee your 2023 San Diego Regional Champion.
Oh, honestly, I feel like just dreaming, because like I've been saying to my friends that like if I go hop and hop like 5 wins, 5 losses on the Swiss rounds, I would be like fine, but I kind of overdid my goal, so yeah, it just feels amazing. Yeah, it was really good because I got to see a lot of people whom I only talked via online, and I got to meet them in person and like talk and play games, so yeah, that's amazing. Winning Worlds would be some of my like final stage as a player, because I started playing this game watching Seijun Park, another Korean world champion, winning it, so getting on this stage might mean some kind of ending for, you know, like animations or movies where it's like the change of generation.
Welcome back, Quaxley enjoyers. We are here for our round 8 coverage of the North American International Championships. Joe Brown and Adam Dorcott. Adam, it's going to be a fun one with us here in round 8. It's going to be a good time.
First of all, I want to go back to the Quaxley comment. That hairstyling, that it goes from that to that, like it goes to like the nice, neat kind of captain's hat from where he starts. What is that technique?
I think he's in a humid day in London. You're probably used to that.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that situation. Humidity is something I deal with regularly. But no, round 8 is upon us, and I am very, very excited. We've already got kind of one player, or one set of players already making it in. They're now fighting out to be the undefeated, but you know, I'm not saying the rest of the day was a waste. I'm absolutely not saying that, but it's definitely a collection of appetizers. And
now we're at the main course?
We're hitting the mains, absolutely. And like, not just the sides on the mains, we're into the meat of the dish.
The meat and potatoes, if you will. Not the mac and cheese on the side. This is round 8 at NAIC we're talking about, Adam.
Yeah.
This is the sirloin steak right now.
I'm going to say it's a ribeye. That's how good it is. That's where we're at. The quality that we've seen today deserves the highest cut of steak, right? It really does. And it's honestly been great to watch so many different players and see names as well that I wasn't expecting to see up there. We've seen so many great games on stream, and I know just walking around the venue, there's been some great games out there as well. So really excited to see how this tournament kind of wraps up day 1 and sets us up for a wonderful day 2.
Also, importantly, shout out to Columbus. It's actually had some wonderful dinner options the last couple of nights. There's a lot of great food in Columbus.
Yeah, Columbus is actually pretty good for a good dinner. It's
a fun time here at NAIC, and Adam and I are going to get ready for our round 8 matchup. Should be a fun time, but we can just, you know, talk a little bit here as they're getting ready on stage. This is our first match together, so I wonder your confidence for you specifically after the pronunciation battle on stage. How you feel? How do you feel like you did post-game interview, post-game press conference against Rose and Sierra?
I feel I was naturally at a disadvantage due to where I'm from, and I think I held my own pretty well. I think there was a few little missteps there.
Yeah, we'll get them next time.
Yeah, we'll be back. You know, I wasn't like out of the mix. I wasn't like a runaway winner, but we were there. Also, hold on. Rose came in with prior knowledge of this, so you know, I'd feel real good going into a test if somebody like just slipped me the answers on the way in.
I mean, in theory, you should have prior knowledge too, because some of these Pokemon you've known for, you know, you've known Sigilif. You nailed Sigilif.
Yeah, because I remember when that was sort of viable, and also was relevant in TCG for a little bit too.
Yeah, so I think you should you know, rest easy at night. Yeah. You know, strong. You did as well as you could there.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with my work. I don't think I've got anything to be particularly worried about. But in the long run, I think there's LGM. Come on.
Come on, Jeff. Come on. Who among us has not?
who has not been able to get that one right? I mean, a Pokemon that you if you're doing anything with it, you're evolving it into Behem.
True.
And apart from that, yeah, I think that's about it.
Well, there's a Pokemon we do definitely know how to pronounce, and that is Dondozo, and it's going to be showcased yet again, just like we've seen throughout multiple times in day one here. And I just wonder what the resurgence has been, because like everyone was down on Dondozo the last, let's say, month-ish of the format, and there's been quite a strong showing here in Columbus.
Because all the counters got dropped. That's what I'm saying. Is so many people were like, you know, if you're putting together the team, do you need Haze? Just avoid the Dondozo, right? And then a bunch of people turn up and then take advantage of that situation by being like, oh, well, you don't have Haze. I mean, think about it. You know, I sort of mentioned it earlier in the day. The Palafins dropped, which was a prominent Haze user. You know, I don't think every...
TM Pals are running Sacred Sword instead of Haze now.
Yeah. So you're just kind of relying on like Clear Smog, really, to do it from the Amoonguss. Doesn't feel like the safest way around it, right? Particularly when you're already kind of struggling for space on the Amoonguss's moveset.
And we're seeing so much Oblivious Dondozo compared to, I feel like back, you know, earlier on in the format, not just Regulation C, but Scarlet and Violet as a whole for VGC. It was definitely the Unaware variant was significant, let's say like 90-10 split, honestly. But as we look at the Swiss standings going into round 8, we can see that there are actually 6 trainers already qualified for day 2 tomorrow. That's got to be very exciting for them going into these last 2 rounds.
And these are 6 trainers that are going to be able to extend their lead potentially heading into day 2, right? If you think it through, there'll be 3 remaining at the end of this round undefeated, and then, you know, then it all kind of shakes out to see who stands at the top and who goes into day number 2 with a monstrous advantage, I'd say. Being undefeated compared to being 7-2 is way, way different. We're going to be focusing on that 6-1, though. We love to see people, you know, cross that threshold and get on in to day number 2. They'll have 1 more round to extend it to a potential 8-1 as well. But there's a bunch of great players in that bracket as well. Names that have been bouncing around. Names, you know, new and old as well.
Yeah, for sure. There are definitely some names that everyone can know if they were longtime BGC fans that are at that 6-1 mark right now. And I think Siddharth also did great in NASC last year as well, so it might just be very comfortable in Columbus here for Siddharth. But our stream matches, we see some of the other notable matches, is going to be Marco and Kyle, and that should be an exciting one.
Oh, that one's going to be fantastic. I think Marco, being a former international champion as well, versus Kyle, who's sort of a great longevity in the game, always been around, putting up good numbers. I think, you know, a lot of credit to his ability to keep putting up results.
Yeah, Kyle is a former regional champion, and as well, arguably a stronger accomplishment was making Top Cut with Wochien. Is that more of an accomplishment than winning a regional?
I think so. I think being able to, I mean, it didn't go well for him in Top Cut, but he did get to display it, so I do have to give him some credit there.
That's all that matters. He made it.
Yeah, he shows that it has potential. Gonna be honest, he's not brought it here to this tournament, which is disappointing, but...
That's tough for your prediction board.
It's not helping the prediction board at all.
I think there's a different, just how like there's the players in the crowd, they have different things they're trying to accomplish. Like, I just need a top 64, or no, I need a top 4 to get my, you know, day 2 or whatever. I think our caster predictions, we also have different things we're trying to achieve. Like, sometimes like, no, I want to be correct. I want these 4 Pokemon to have a prominent place. On my end, personally, I was like, I think there's some cool dragon types that like to terrestrialize out of their dragon typing. I'm gonna put 4 dragons.
I think Garchomp's cool. I did go Garchomp as well. I did go Garchomp. I think
controversial statement. Garchomp is cool.
No, I mean, it's been in this awkward spot in the metagame, right, where we all know Garchomp's a good Pokemon. But then everyone's sort of like, oh, there's a lot of Flutter Mane, I don't want to deal with that. Like, just terrestrialize it, and you get out of that issue. Of course, you open yourself up to new issues, but it does kind of limit your options a little bit in how you play that one out. But, you know, I think maybe I picked it as, is it an opportunity where it can kind of jump forward and start causing those problems?
Yeah, I'm going to put the onus on the field that hopefully we have some strong Bax Caliber players, because I felt confident in that. I feel like Bax Caliber is one of those Pokemon that when you just don't prepare for, like maybe like in Assault Vest, Terra, Poison, just really bulky Bax Caliber can really be a problem and tough to deal with. But we haven't seen that for me so far. My predictions haven't seen Bax Caliber. We've not seen Roaring Moon either. I know there are Roaring Moons floating around. Paul Chua, Paul Ruiz as well. Maybe there's a connection there to the Roaring Moon from the Paul players, but we haven't seen it on stream yet, so it doesn't count for me.
No, it's got to be on stream, but I think we're looking at some of the results likely to get it there in the next couple of days.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But what were your other spots there? You had the Earthworm. That was kind of the commander from backstage. It still counts. It was on a stream team. Who else did you have?
Yeah, I had Garchomp, Azumarill.
Yep, got that out right out.
Yeah, right off the gate. And what was my last one? Oh, the Wochian, yeah. So,
that's Wochian, yeah.
Yeah.
We think Baxcalibur's more likely than Wochian to be on stream?
I think it's about the same.
it's 50-50.
It is. Hey, there we go. All right.
There we go. Okay, so we're looking at, and I think like Rose is definitely rocking it except for the Rotom. She's on 3.
The Rotom. The Rotom defense is alive and well with Rose.
Yeah, and Jake as well. Jake, our good friend, fellow caster, he's a big Rotom Wash fan.
You gotta give credits to Sierra with this Screamtail pick, because that's been all over. Zachary Thornburg, obviously Wolf Glick, Brady had it on his team as well, and unsurprisingly with it being on Wolf, so just being able to see that one come through.
Oh wait, I think Scott won. I think he's had all 4 on stream.
He has. Oh no, by just having them on stream, Scott's absolutely done us there.
He's a legend. What can you do?
I mean, maybe Sierra and I kind of hindered our chances a little bit with our 1 and 4 respectively.
Yeah, but you have to respect the commitment, right? Obviously, it wouldn't be Sierra if she went all season with this, leader of the Slitherwing initiative, and then NAIC is like, yeah, no, I think Volcarona is more likely to show up. Like, you can't do that. Sierra.
That would actually be disgraceful.
That'd be soul crushing.
I would probably ask if she was okay if she didn't pick Slitherwing on one of these challenges.
Yeah, it's tough for a bug that's weak to Fluttermane, It's tough to exist in a format like this.
Yeah, it's not ideal. You do have to dodge the Fluttermane.
The 27% of people that don't have a Fluttermane, you gotta hope to hit all of them.
27% of the time, you dodge it every time. That's all I'm saying.
That is for sure. And you're just getting set up on stage for this matchup between Kyle and Marco. And I think one of the things to note in the Dondozo world, let's say, right? There's a lot of trainers that also brought Dondozo, so it's kind of like the Garganacl days or the old Celesteela or, days where just a lot of back and forth and slow play. I wonder the mental stream, like not everybody who's played through 7 rounds of Swiss so far in VGC today has been through the same has to show the same mental fortitude to get to this spot.
There's a very different situation between playing 14 rounds and taking everything 2-0 and grinding out 21 games,
48-minute rounds.
It's a very different game. I do think that Fluttermane at 73% is absolutely nuts, and can it be stopped, Joe? What can we do about this?
So I think there's one note that Fluttermane at 73% is crazy, but then you could also argue it should be higher if you think, I wonder what Day 2's rate is going to be. I'm excited to find that out, because Fluttermane, it's one of those Pokemon like Landorus or Incineroar or Mega Kangaskhan, right? Like that, its best answer is itself. So you're not only running Fluttermane because you think it's strong, it's also to handle all of your opponents that have Fluttermane as well.
Everyone loves a Fluttermane mirror. It's my favorite part of the game.
It's better than some of the other mirrors that we've had, right?
What mirror would you say is one of the worst to play, just from having to figure it out?
I mean, the Celesteela days was Leech Seed leftovers. That was a tough time.
That was a rough one.
That was a tough one. I guess Garganacl is up there now. That would be our current Scarlet and Violet version of those mirrors. Maybe Dondozo back with the Unaware stuff. You don't get any extra damage from it. But when you look at any of these Pokemon on this top 12, I'm actually surprised. I talked about it with Sierra out in the lounge. I'm surprised Chi-Yu is in 6th. I really think it's a fantastic Pokemon, not only for its own merits, but also making Fluttermane and Iron Bundle stronger threats offensively. So I'd be surprised that in Day 2, I wonder where Chi-Yu's ranking is going to be on the graphic.
I think it moves up a little bit. The Tinglu feels like a lot of the top players have moved away from it, so maybe that will go down in exchange as well. And the one that surprised me actually is Golden Go back up on this high on the graphic. I mean, thinking back to Regulation A, Regulation B, it's kind of everywhere. We immediately dropped it down in Regulation C. A lot of people pivoted away from it. We had the Palafin era as well. And then the Golden Go just kind of popping back in at 20%, higher than an Arcanine too, but that number's probably skewed a little bit by the Gyarados Arcanine combination, right? Where you're not going to bring both. That's silly. That's too much Intimidate. So you just bring one, and now the room's being split a little bit more. It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, especially because if you have Gyarados, Arcanine, and Amoonguss as your Fire Water Grass core, it's just like pure support essentially at that point. You don't have as much offensive output there. But Pokemon that was supportive at the beginning of the format with Iron Hands has definitely turned into much more of a damage dealer with the Swords Dance. And even the last set, we didn't get to see the Terrafire, but it was an option for that matchup. So most of the time you see the Terra Grass, but I think the identity of certain Pokemon have really swapped around throughout these last couple months of Regulation C.
Big Sword Dance Iron Hands guy myself. Just absolutely, like, that's what my issue was with Iron Hands at the beginning. It was just never taking knockouts. It was doing good chunks, but I didn't see it get knockouts. And so in my head, as a player who really enjoys hyper offense, I'm like, why would you bring this? What are you doing? Fake outing? I got time for this.
Yeah.
And then somebody was like, oh, actually, if you Swords Dance and just Thunder Punch everything, you're doing all right.
I think one of the actual biggest benefactors to offensive Iron Hands has been the detractors on Palafin, and because Palafin is not as viable right now, at least the main meta game, you don't need to be AV Volt Switch to get to switch out Baby Palafin and get Hero Form right out on the same turn. So it's actually it's allowed more agency with the Iron Hand sets to be more offensive, because before it was like, I need to fake out for this move to get Golden Go to Nasty Plot, or I need to Volt Switch for Palafin to switch back in. Now it's like, no, I need Iron Hands because it's a really strong Pokemon and provides a lot of damage.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at the graphic, right, there's 3 Pokemon in there that you know are Dark type. You love Drain Punching those. Yeah. It's so much fun.
Can't get enough of it.
Yeah, get so much health back, get some knockouts. It's great fun. That said, we have been going on about our opinions on the format for a little bit. It's time to see what's going on stage. We've got 2 fantastic players ready to go.
Yeah, we have Marco Hamantha Caldera Silva, former international champion, versus Kyle Livinghouse, a big threat here in North America and a former regional champion to his name. There is the Dragapult. First time I believe we're seeing that dragon Pokemon here today in Columbus.
Yeah, it's a great partner for the Chien-Pao. Usually you see it as the Dragonite, but some people want to mix it up a little bit, right, and go for the Dragapult. Speaking of dragons, the Garchomp does make an appearance on Marco's team, being able to show what it can do. It's got one of those really nicely rounded teams surrounding it. And talking about it earlier with some of the guys up in the Analyst Lounge, it kind of just takes over the Ting Lu slot. But what does it do better than Ting Lu?
Damage.
There it is. Being able to put that down and start to threaten really aggressively. I mean, yeah, it's going to have the Iron Hands to go after. You know, could potentially try and get some damage down onto, you know, something like the Chien-Pao. That would be really important. So definitely a tough one to use. Obviously, we've got to talk about on Kyle's team, Dondozo, no Tatsugiri.
Yeah, those percentages are not equal, right?
Yeah.
In the usage, Dondozo is going to be there more often. So usually when you see a Dondozo opt to not have its buddy Tatsugiri on the team, it is just a more general purpose bulky water type, right? We know water to be one of the best general typings, especially with terrestrialization. Many things Terra into water. So you might as well just have Dondozo with access to Yawn and Protect and Heavy Slam as a Flutter Mane counter, just being a general all-purpose bulky water type.
Yeah, classic. We've been doing bulky waters for years, and now people have realized maybe the Tatsugiri play was a little bit greedy, a little bit far.
Well, I think Kyle kind of has somewhat of a combination of strategies here, because the Dragapult and Chien-Pao was a strategy Justin Tang used to win his second regional, the first Regulation C event. And Kyle Livinghouse has used many Dondozo and Wo-Chien and Glimmora, whatever strategies. So he's kind of bringing 2 worlds together here of Chien-Pao, Dragapult, hyper offensive physical attackers, and then has a little bit of an option to slow the game's pace down with Yawn Dondozo.
Yeah, it's definitely something that he can play into. But, I mean, just the balance, yes, I know there's no Ting Lu, but the way that this team from Marco can execute is pretty impressive, right? You sort of always have an answer for something, and with the right switches, with the right leads, you can launch yourself into an early advantage and then really start to cause problems. I mean, thinking about the Gyarados, not seen as much of it today as I was expecting, but when you get that Gyarados going, you land those Thunder Waves. You're able to keep them in check with the Taunt, maybe push them around a little bit with the Waterfall. You know, all of these kind of offensive strategies like Chien-Pao and the Dragapult just fall apart if they're not attacking.
And one of the tough spots for Marco in this matchup is his Garchomp is Terrafire safety goggles. There is no Will-O-Wisp on the other side, and there is no Amoonguss for it. So the Garchomp, in theory, is a stronger option. Like you say, it's a more offensive Ting Lu, yet its item and terrestrialization option are not necessarily helping it as much, besides being a defensive Terra for a Flutter Mane.
Yeah, honestly, the safety goggles is such a feels bad when you don't have any sports to be worried about, and you're like,
half the field has Amoonguss, and just my luck, round 8, my opponent doesn't.
yeah. So it feels a little bit kind of wasteful there, I guess. But you know, the amount of games it wins out in the field is very important. And again, same thing with the Terra, right? If you're able to, you know, get away with going Terrafire to avoid the Will-O-Wisp, it does of course help out against the Flutter Mane too. So that's not quite as unimpactful, but it doesn't feel as good as catching a Will-O-Wisp onto a fire terrestrialization.
Yeah, and the Iron Hands as well on Marco's end is Terrafire, so really indexing hard into the anti-Will-O-Wisp strategy on his two physical attackers in Iron Hands and Garchomp. This Iron Hands does not have access to Sword Stance because the Garchomp is holding those swords there. It's instead going to be the Assault Vest Iron Hands, and we know just how bulky an AV Iron Hands can get.
This definitely feels like a heavy kind of counter to the Flutter Mane. You get the fire terrestrialization, then you just heavy slam it back. Makes a lot of sense to be able to play it out that way. Kind of the same idea I think that you're getting out of the Dondozo as well. You know, just being able to come in, tank up some hits a little bit with the leftovers, and just heavy slam back. So, you know, Flutter Mane is great counter to Flutter Mane, but both these trainers have found something else that'll allow them to do it as well.
All right, let's get into it. Kyle Livinghouse and Marco Himantha Caldura Silva here in round 8 of NAIC. You might want to strap in and you know, get yourself a drink, get some popcorn, because Ting Lu Dondozo are on the field.
This is not going to be an explosive turn 1. This is going to be a very positional game. There's going to be a lot of turns trying to get the board into a position they want, as you know, it looks like we're waiting for those offensive threats to come to the fore.
Yeah, looking back and forth on Kyle's moves there, we do see the Sand Tomb on Ting Lu. Not going to be able to go for any attacks this turn thanks to that critical hit, fake out stopping its attack. Up next is Dondozo, and one of the best counters into Amoonguss to stop it from putting all your Pokemon to sleep is instead to yawn it there. At least the Spore does go into Ting Lu here, and there's no Lumberry this time around. It is a Citrus Berry on the Ting Lu.
That is a really rough turn for the Ting Lu. It gets crit, fake out flinch, and then it gets put to sleep as well. So Ting Lu not going to be super involved in the early portion of this game. We do get to see what is in the back as well for Kyle. So not pairing it off with the Chien-Pao I think is interesting, but you know, probably feels kind of safe to get it in right now. Maybe try and catch a Drain Punch on that Ting Lu slot, and then be able to, you know, get it in for free, and hope, of course, that he doesn't double down with another Sport into that slot. The Dondozo needs to be careful. That could get put to sleep as well. And of course, the Dondozo could also just be getting a lot of damage sent its way from the side of the Iron Hands. The Amoonguss forced out. I kind of like this, but this is going to be a really nice, actually, turn for the Gyarados to get in.
Yeah, Marco trying to maintain some momentum here, not letting his Amoonguss go to sleep. Unfortunately, the Intimidate is going to affect neither of Kyle's two Pokemon there, but he did get the call of the fighting attack into the Ghost switch in, so no damage on to Kyle's Pokemon. And there's the yawn. Kyle deciding either Amoonguss goes to sleep, or if you do switch it out, I yawn the next thing.
The yawn lock is kind of nasty. It's something that we've seen in previous formats where you just keep one slot switching around because they're so desperate to not fall asleep. It's really awkward because, like, I'm not asleep yet, but I will be at the end of the turn, and that could be like 2-3 turns more. So being able to just catch that switch, I liked the Gyarados coming in. I like that it might be able to kind of apply a little bit of pressure with the Thunder Wave, right, and just win those speed ties every single time. But not landing the Intimidate doesn't feel great there. Here's the force switch because of the yawn, and it's really going to be up to Kyle to see if he can take advantage of this.
There is the Amoonguss coming into the Gyarados slot yet again, and Kyle not switching around here. We saw locking in the terrestrialization Terra Ghost, so Dragon Ball is going to get the same type attack boost as it was already a Ghost type. It's going to have even stronger Ghost attacks. But you wonder why it's not using the Phantom Force as a 2-turn attack. Instead, it's Terra Blast with this Ghost move into the Iron Hands slot, doing pretty much exactly 50% of its HP. And a Heavy Slam in retaliation will also bring Dragon Ball down under half. There it is, 3 times in a row, yawning that left slot on Marco's side.
Kyle's loving that yawn lock and just assuming that you know, he's not going to have any problems getting it done. This Dragapult as well, holding the choice band, so going all in with the Terra Ghost, being able to put down extra damage potentially with the side of the Terra Blast, right? Just being able to throw that down, you know, getting that Iron Hands nice and low, or at least below half, so it's in range for another one. The concern, I think, for Kyle is what happens if this Dragapult gets spored, right? Like, if the Amoonguss just stays in and sacrifices itself for the Dragapult, I think you end up slowing down a lot. That's why we've got this switch.
And that's what Kyle is banking on here, as his Ting-Lu is already asleep. Going to anticipate the Spore going into that slot, and it will not work. Gyarados does switch out into the Iron Hands slot there. This Intimidate actually does affect Ting-Lu this time around, so he gets a little bit of value out of the Gyarados. Yawn, though, Kyle again predicting correctly. Iron Hand switches out, and the Gyarados is Spored or yawned immediately. The Spore perfect turn from Kyle, as well as now Amoonguss has to take a nap.
That's a really well played turn from Kyle, actually. I like the way that he's able to, you know, suggest what's going to happen to himself, right? He's like, oh, Amoonguss is just going to take it and Spore. Fine, I'll yawn the other slot, and now we'll have a double kind of yawn situation going on where it's like, oh, you put Amoonguss in the back, it's asleep, it's not taking its sleep turn. Ooh, that's going to be pretty unhelpful later. So now the yawn lock slot has switched over to the right side of the field, and we'll see if Kyle is going to be able to keep that up. And if he does, how is he going to capitalize on that?
And, you know, this Dondozo is making a long line of bulky water types proud right now throughout the history of VGC, is just sitting here being a problem for Marco to deal with. Finally, a little offensive pressure, but the Wave Crash is not enough to knock out the Iron Hands on the switch-in.
I think the big thing here is Kyle needs the Ting-Lu to wake up, because the Ting-Lu is kind of that extra bit of damage that it needs to be able to fire back the damage, you know, clean up on this Iron Hands, get some damage down onto this Amoonguss. Even though the Amoonguss is probably going to switch at some point and just regenerate it all back up, that is a big wave. But this Dondozo, bulky waters are proud when it sees how well it took that.
Yeah, it takes that like a champ. Ting-Lu does finally wake up, and here is the Stomping Tantrum into the Iron Hands. Very low HP, obviously. More than enough to knock it out there. It was just more important that Ting-Lu